All right. And we are live. Okay, everyone. Welcome to Wolf Crypto. I'm really excited to get into this conversation. Welcome to the podcast. We've got MarginFi on the podcast. We're talking yield, lending, borrowing. We're talking platforms that allow you to use your assets and create more and essentially put your money to work is probably the best way to put it. I won't sit here and do the full intro because we've got the man himself here to do so. But hey, listen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk about MarginFi. If you could do just a quick little introduction on yourself and then maybe how you joined the company, and then we can dive into a little bit about the origin story of what MarginFi is looking to do and to fill in the gap in the market.
Yeah, glad to be on this podcast. My name's Nathan, Master Zorgon on Twitter.
Yes,
If you want to give me a
sir.
follow and just keep in touch. I lead a lot of growth at MarginFi, so growth of our developer ecosystem, and I also am kind of like the first in line for our customer support, just making sure our users are as happy as possible. Yeah, I started at MarginFi like approaching a year ago. I joined immediately out of college, but I've been in the Solana space for actually quite a few years. Previously to MarginFi, I worked at Helios as a DevRel engineer. For those of you that aren't familiar with Helios or Solana, they're like the biggest RPC provider. But yeah, wanted to pivot to MarginFi post graduation to get my hands on like a product company. Was really interested in that, and MarginFi is one of the biggest lending platforms in crypto. So I thought it would just be a cool opportunity to lead an entire vertical at one of the largest DeFi protocols and just create a lot of value for users in creating capital efficiency. So yeah, that's a high level overview of my background. MarginFi, like I said, is one of the largest DeFi protocols. We're primarily a lending yield market, I guess you could call us. Basically, if you have idle crypto assets, specifically Solana assets, because we are based exclusively on Solana at the moment, you could just lend those into MarginFi, earn really competitive yield on those assets, some of the best yield in Solana and the DeFi markets. And then you could even borrow against that, right? Using what you lent as collateral. And then you take what you borrow and do whatever you want with it, right? Loop it. You can trade it in the markets. You can use it to pay your rent. I mean, the types of use cases people approach me with are pretty much endless. People use MarginFi for literally everything. So yeah, we're just kind of a yield primitive on Solana. We're one of the most liquid markets in Solana DeFi, and yeah, that's a little bit on MarginFi.
Amazing, dude. Yeah, I was gonna say, so this particular part of the industry has, I don't know, I guess I didn't know too much about it in this past couple of years when I was in crypto land, but it's popped up in a lot of conversation, way more than in past years. So what do you think it is about the lending and yielding and borrowing that people are jumping into more? I know in the past cycles we had like a DeFi summer once, then we had like an NFT cycle, and all these people are foaming into stuff, at least from the retail side of things. But I'm starting to see a lot of conversation in retail. So maybe a little bit on, what is the gap, I guess, in the industry? Why is that people are going here instead of just buying spot, buying in, trying to flip the tokens? Are you thinking that this just might be a better way for the average retail person to be able to just put their money to work a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, lending is just like a very basic financial primitive. Like it's nothing new to crypto. It's really like
Mhm.
nothing that novel. We've always had savings accounts, right?
Yeah.
And like people have always been able to borrow out of the bank using some collateral that they've posted. So yeah, like margin, the idea of MarginFi and like other lending venues on Solana DeFi or crypto in general, like really aren't that novel. I think lending is just like a financial primitive that's always existed and that there always will be a market for. Um, at the time that MarginFi, you know, was first erected and became a thing in Solana DeFi, there actually weren't that many um, solid foundational like yield venues in Solana. I think the only major one actually was Solend at the time. Now it's called Save. They've since rebranded. But unfortunately, Solend had experienced like multiple major hacks. So the Solana ecosystem was really desperate for just another alternative, right, to post their capital, earn yield passively, and maybe even access some collateral so they can trade with while also having exposure to their portfolio. Um, so when MarginFi came online, it was a smash hit, right? And MarginFi is still one of the most used programs on Solana, despite there being more competition at this point in time. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. I personally don't. I think you know if we're to say that um, lending venues are becoming hotter, I think it's just a byproduct of more liquidity entering into DeFi in general. Because yeah, the lending market is just a it- it's it's an evergreen it's an evergreen product, right? Like it's people are always going to want yield, and they're
Yeah,
always going to want to borrow against some collateral. So yeah.
definitely. And then what do you think? There are options. There's tons of competition out there. What is it the main thing that separates MarginFi from the rest of the people? I mean, we were talking right before. Actually, maybe I can pull it up now. Maybe the best time. But we were looking at some of the top validators in Solana. And for people who are watching along, definitely redirect your eyes if you were doing the dishes or something while listening, because now I have something pulled up here on the screen. But you guys have like two or three of the top five, with you guys. Could you explain a little bit on this page here? Because I thought that was fascinating, and you guys are killing it right now.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I think the question was what differentiates MarginFi from the other leading lending venues in Solana. So right now, basically what you're showing is a list of the top performing validators in Solana. Um, so these are basically the validators that earn the staker the most revenue for their SOL, right? And as you can see, Margin 4 is currently ranked number 5. Temporal Emerald, which is a partner company of ours, is ranked number 3. And KV Cool, who is an engineer that works at our companies, his personal validator is ranked number 10. So I think that goes to show that like our low level understanding and expertise of Solana um, at like a protocol level is far beyond that of any other lending venue by far. And so what that means is it allows us to like experiment and ship certain features that other lending venues just can't. And so, for example, we recently fully audited and we're preparing a feature launch called native stake as collateral. So, for the first time, pretty much ever in all of crypto, not just Solana, when you stake to a validator, any validator, you'll be able to collateralize your native stake accounts and then borrow against it, right? So, um, traditionally, if you wanted to access collateral, or sorry, if you wanted to access, capital on MarginFi, you'd have to lend, some cryptocurrency into our platform, USDC or Sol or, whatever it is that you have, and then borrow against that like kind of natively on our platform. Uh, Now you actually don't need to lend capital directly on our platform. You could stake to a validator if you have Sol, and then still borrow
Mm,
against that, right? So for me, I'm
mm.
a very risk averse person, despite working in DeFi and the crypto casino. I'm actually very risk averse. So for those of you that like aren't Solana native, there's essentially zero. It's, this is not financial advice, but there's essentially zero risk when staking natively to a validator, right? Because like staking is actually like a core functionality at the protocol level, right?
Mhm.
Um, Whereas, if you were to lend on any kind of yield venue, you're inheriting the protocol risk. If like Camino ever got hacked, well,
Yeah.
you might be screwed. If Solend ever got hacked, you might be screwed, etc. And we've seen that before. Never on
Mm.
margin vibe, but we've seen that before. Um, so if you're like a risk averse person, for example, you could stake your soul to a validator and still access uh, capital via MarginFi. And a lot of validators, like the ones that you saw on MarginFi, give some of the biggest yields in Solana
Yeah.
DeFi, bigger than what you'd even find on a lending market. Um, so there's a lot of like interesting use cases that you could do there. Like I know one of our engineers, we were talking, and so there's actually an interesting arbitrage opportunity on MarginFi where you could like stake to one of our validators that's yielding like say 10% APY, right? You could stake your SOL to our validators. Using native stake as collateral, you can then borrow against that. Um, say borrow like USDC,
Mm,
swap that USDC for more SOL, and then stake that again to your validator. So you're like leveraging the amount of SOL you have and maximizing your
mhm,
APY. Whereas the borrow rate for SOL is like, say, I think on MarginFi, it's like, 7 or 8%. Actually, let
mhm.
me check that right now. Yeah. So the current borrow rate for SOL is like 7%. So your net APY, you're basically, it's like a profitable arbitrage opportunity. Um, so yeah, kind of a long-winded answer. Essentially, I say what differentiates MarginFi from the rest of the pack is just our talents. Honestly, we have an incredibly deep understanding of Solana at a protocol level, and it allows us to just ship features that not only that you don't see in other yield venues, but I don't think you've seen a feature like that in anywhere else in crypto. So yeah, hope that
Yeah.
answers your question.
It does. And I think probably the next question that comes to mind for anyone watching is probably, okay, that's awesome. Tons of wins, huge opportunity, one of the leaders in the sector, clearly. How do you guys go about security management when you're moving these large sums of money, when the money seems like it's popping out left and right? People are going to be like, okay, hold on, how do we know this is secure? What happens if something goes wrong? What kind of things do you have in place for those people who are asking?
Yeah, I mean, like we have an insurance fund, right? Like, so in the worst case scenario, like say, if an Oracle provider had an issue, and Oracle is kind of like the pricing mechanism that we use to reference like token prices on our platform. And Oracles are like critical infrastructure for all DeFi apps because,
Mhm.
especially for a lending venue, because of course, say if the price of your collateral goes down a certain threshold, it exposes you to liquidation, and you could be potentially wrongfully liquidated. So, like in events like those, like we have like an insurance fund for your assets. Um, Obviously, we're double audited. We're completely open source, and we have a bug bounty program that's like pretty active. So, like we're one of the most. Actually, I'm like very comfortable saying that we are the most stress tested yield venue on Solana by far, and I can say that because back in April of last year, during a market downturn, like anywhere from 200 to 300 million dollars of liquidity exited our platform within the span of like 1 week. So fun fact, on any other yield venue that is actually not possible because they will lock the funds. They will actually lock your funds on their platform. So your money really isn't truly yours. Um, Only on MarginFi are your funds truly yours, right? So 200, $300 million of liquidity left the platform without a hitch, right? Liquidations went smoothly, withdrawals went smoothly. Um, I think one of the most unique things about MarginFi that people don't usually think about, but it's a really important sentiment, especially in crypto, right? Is that you can withdraw any amount at any time, and you can deposit any amounts at any time. Um, and we kind of balance that out with like utilization rates, APYs, etc. I mean, the markets are always going to move in the direction of profit.
Yeah.
So like the markets balance out everything in the end, right? If USDC spikes to 50% APY, people are going to arb that out really
Oh yeah.
quickly.
That would
So
be an insane arbitrage.
we've seen it. We've seen it a lot. We actually saw it like a few months ago. Sol's been doing like a little this thing lately, and so like with
Yes.
just like um with the status of the market, like liquidity kind of fluctuates as well. So yeah, like we've seen USDC kind of like jiggle around as well. We've seen APYs as high as 60% for USDC. Right now, it's I think around well, let me see, what is it? USDC right now is 7% APY, which is pretty solid. I mean, your average high yield savings rate's like 4, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I have a bank account with, I think, American Express with a hefty amount in the savings, and it's like well, two things. It keeps going down every time I check. It's like, oh, you're down another
mm,
APY point. I'm like, what the
oh
heck's
wow.
happening? But I think it's down to maybe four point two
Yeah.
five percent, something like that.
Yeah.
It's okay, but it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
dang,
Yeah, I mean, average savings rate is 0.56% APY, which
that's not
doesn't
bad. Yeah,
protect you
that's
against
yeah,
inflation even. And like a high yield a really good high yield savings rate is like 4.75, which only
yeah,
barely gets you above the line for inflation. Assuming that
barely.
inflation, what is inflation right now? Inflation rate right
Inflation
now.
is kicking my butt. That's what it's
Let me
doing.
see. Yeah, I think current inflation rate's like 2.9%. So yeah, it like barely gets you past
Jeez.
inflation. So your money's like basically your money's like not growing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like that's one of the most compelling reasons why you would want to use an
Mm,
on-chain lending venue like MarginFi, because the yields you can get on your money are, I mean, you just can't find that in TradFi, right? In the TradFi
mm.
markets, it's like literally impossible. Um, on
Well,
other
what do you think
stable
that disconnect
assets.
is, though? Like when people, because the TradFi people will come and they say, okay, I get it, the yield thing, but then when the number goes up a little bit higher, they start to get really nervous. They're like, hold on, that shouldn't be possible. This is a scam. And the TradFi sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes they'll immediately go to that and they'll jump to the conclusion. You know?
Well, I mean, these are just different mechanisms, right? So it really kind of depends on like which protocol we're talking about and like, what their mechanism is. But for peer-to-peer lending, you know, the APYs are just a reflection of like market demand, right? It's like very simple borrow and demand, basically. Um, So yeah, and like APYs actively kind of reflect that. So like right now in our stable assets, USDC, you have 7% APY, USDT, 6%, USDS. We have like 12% APY, so a little bit higher. But yeah, so hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. One other thing that comes to mind is like the amount of degen behavior on Solana gets quite a bit of transaction volume, momentum, and attention just in general. You guys are building exclusively on Solana. Is there any conversation about expanding, or is that not the move? You're like, hey, we're going to hunker down here in Solana. This is why, kind of thing.
No, I mean, we're bullish on Solana. We believe in the ecosystem and just like in the technology itself. We think Solana is still definitely in its infancy. The technology has a long, long way to go. We still have to release Fire Dancer, which is like a new validated client that's going to make Solana even faster.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah. So there are a lot of really exciting like protocol level improvements that we expect to come out in the next like 1 to 2 years. So yeah, like we're homebound on Solana. We have no plans on really moving elsewhere. It's also important to consider that when you jump on a different protocol, you're you have to it's like learning an entirely new language, right? Because all these different
Mm,
systems have completely different like mechanisms and designs. So it's a very, very significant undertaking. We'd rather build a very, very high quality product on Solana. We think the market's on Solana. That was our bet, 2 years ago. It's turned out that we were right because a lot of the liquidity is coming to Solana these days. So yeah, no plans on leaving.
makes sense. I mean, Solana is popping right now. It's absolutely popping, and doesn't show like it's. People were saying, Solana ran. It's the new age for X blockchain, and I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like every time I sleep on Solana, I get wrecked. So I was like, Solana's a good chain. They're doing well, but certainly, they've got things that are cooking to improve, and that's awesome to hear. I didn't know that they were gonna be building that into increasing speed. I mean, Solana's pretty quick already as it is. So that's awesome to hear. Curious as well here, you mentioned you're building on Solana. One thing you get as a benefit of just choosing one chain is you get a little bit more ingrained in the ecosystem. You get that like home vibe. People are like, oh yeah, home team kind of thing. Any partnerships cooking or any past partnerships maybe that you think are worth bringing up that were pretty interesting, or things in the future that you're looking forward to?
That's an interesting question. I mean, nothing. I guess like so that's an interesting question. MarginFi basically wants to be a liquidity like primitive for the entire Solana ecosystem. So what I mean by that is any app that wants to give their users yield, natively in their app, or maybe even leverage in their app, like spot leverage, etc. They can and should be able to use MarginFi to do that, right? So, like, say you're building an app, right, and it's like, I don't know, like whatever, some like video game app, whatever, etc. And users deposit funds into those apps, and you think it would be a big unlock for your users to give them yield on those assets natively inside of your app, right? You can actually use MarginFi's SDK to do that, right? So, like, technically, users are earning MarginFi yields without ever touching or knowing about MarginFi, right? We're kind of like this, like, back-end implementation. So there are actually like quite a few products that use MarginFi for this reason. Loopscale is a newer product. They're a really cool, interesting product. They're also kind of like a lending venue, but they're like an order book style lending venue. So MarginFi is a pool-based style. They're an order book style, just like a different mechanism and a different design. But so as users like orders wait to execute, like wait to find a matching buyer, and the funds are just kind of sitting there idly, those funds are actually earning yield in the interim on MarginFi, right? So that's like one example. Mantis is a cool project. They're a layer 2 on Solana that would allow you to seamlessly swap your cryptocurrencies between Ethereum and Solana without bridging, like instant settlement.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool product. And the assets deposited onto Mantis are also passively earning yield via MarginFi. So there are like numerous products that use MarginFi as a backend kind of yield layer, basically, without even users even knowing, because why should they, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of like a inconsequential detail. Um, so yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like being natively in Solana, um, culture in crypto is very non-trivial, right? And
Mm.
Solana has a very specific culture that I haven't seen elsewhere in crypto. I think it's really interesting how like culture forms within these like ecosystems. Um,
Yeah.
but that being said, you're able to network and meet people, um, and like, you know, there's this vibe of like we're all in this together. So
Yeah.
let's help each other build the best products we can within the
Nathan, you
ecosystem.
were so close to saying LFG. You were like, we're all in this
Oh
together. LFG. I was waiting for that to come out. I was like, the Solana degen's about to show himself. Mr. Master Zorgon's going to come out.
yeah, yeah, that's funny.
So funny.
Uh, but yeah, so yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It
Yeah,
did
that's up.
actually, and honestly, it was kind of like a primer for this question. Like we see, there's other really popular companies building on top of Solana, and they chose to go that route, and they're really leaning into that culture and vibe thing. Like I'm thinking Jupiter, but as well as like marketplaces like a Magic Eden or a wallet like Phantom Wallet, where people are just very familiar with the name because they're just all over the timeline kind of thing. But I'm curious in your thoughts on sort of the current situation as well as where we're headed for DeFi, specifically on Solana. I just figured that was like the perfect primer to dive into this ecosystem because you're building here. So I figured we could stay on that, and if it makes sense to go and expand and talk about DeFi kind of across crypto, I'm also happy to go down that rabbit hole.
So the question is, what's the future of Solana DeFi and maybe crypto in
Kind of,
general?
yeah. Just the most loaded question of all time. We'll see what
I
you got.
mean, look, if I knew the future of Solana DeFi, I'd be rolling in it,
You would.
because the truth is that and the so like the answer is like I think the underlying question to that is actually why crypto, why DeFi, and the answer is just that it's permissionless. So, like, what I mean by that is you can't really predict actually what the next wave will be, because it's the market that decides, right? Like, I don't think really anybody could have predicted like NFTs back when
Mm.
that they first became a thing and the market went crazy with that. And the same way, nobody could really have predicted meme coins. back when, that first kind of became a thing, and then it exploded, right? And that's when a lot of the
Exploded.
liquidity started coming to Solana, because Solana is like the only chain where you can really trade meme coins at scale, just because of like speed and like, like protocol levels, optimizations. Um, so yeah, like the truth is, this next cycle, I'm not sure what the theme is going to be per se. I do know that MarginFi will have a meaningful role in the next cycle, especially with the new features that we're rolling out, such as native stick as collateral. We're also rolling out a cross margin feature. So what that means is, not only will you be able to access capital on MarginFi using your native stake, you will also be able to access capital on MarginFi using your positions you have on other apps, right? So yeah, okay. So let me break it
Wow.
down.
Okay.
So right now, if you want to access capital on MarginFi, there's one way to do it. You post some collateral on MarginFi. You're right. You put some USDC on MarginFi, earn yield on that,
Mm.
and then you can borrow against that, right? Well, let's say you have a position on, some other app, right? It's like you just have a position on another app. You could actually collateralize the position you have on that other app, and then use that collateral to borrow funds out of MarginFi, right? So
Mm.
basically, at MarginFi, we're working on opening new ways for users to access collateral, um, and just like be as capital efficient as possible, because sometimes like the best, yield strategies like don't exist on MarginFi, right? It's just kind of like a market thing. Um, so but you should still be able to interact with MarginFi, like even if that's not the case, um, and like access the collateral that you need to, make your trades or do whatever it is that you need to do. So yeah, so lots of exciting new features coming out on MarginFi that don't exist anywhere else on Solana
Yeah.
crypto, um, or maybe even, just DeFi in general. So yeah, we're really excited for that. Trading activity is not going to slow down.
Yeah.
I mean, the market is finally aware of Solana, and finally taking Solana seriously. I think Solana was kind of this underdog project for such a long
Mm.
time. Um, but users are on Solana, and I think they're here to stay. I think there'll be like even more exciting use cases for traders on Solana coming out in the coming months, especially as Solana becomes even faster and even more reliable. Which
Yeah.
it's only going to become faster and only going to become more reliable. So yeah, like we're excited for where the market's going. Institutional DeFi and TradFi is also becoming more aware and
Mhm.
bullish on Solana specifically. So we're really excited. We're really, really excited.
Dude, that was very cool. The collateralizing assets from other areas of your portfolio is pretty fascinating. So the way it works is, I guess you would have to connect that wallet to MarginFi, right? And then you're saying even if it's a different chain, we can still collateralize the asset.
Not a different chain, a different app. So
Got
this
it.
is
Okay.
so this is all happening on Solana. We can't
Mhm.
collateralize your position on Aave on Ethereum. Although that
Okay.
would be cool, maybe one day.
Could be.
That actually would be pretty cool. No, but say you have some position, some spot position on some other app on Solana. Um, if we have an integration with that app, because we have to
Mhm.
make an integration with the specific apps, but we're going to make integrations with all the biggest ones, the most relevant ones. um, then you'd be able to actually take the position you have on that app, collateralize it on MarginFi, and then access capital on MarginFi to do whatever it is that you want to do, right? Make money. uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Oh, that's very cool. And yeah, that would be cool in the future. I mean, that's one thing I'm catching um, from you guys is that is something that is part of the probably one of the main drivers as to why you guys are at the top of the charts. You know, you guys quite literally have three of the top 10 on the Solana validators, and it seems that it's because you guys are thinking ahead. You're like, okay, what's next? What's the next cycle? How can we at least build the framework out? That way, we don't have to start from zero. Even if a new trend comes in that we're not expecting, at least we'll be able to pivot. That's very cool. I was curious here on I guess the misconceptions around DeFi. DeFi gets thrown around a lot, and a lot of things kind of fall under the umbrella of DeFi. And sometimes people are like, "Is that does that count as DeFi? Is this safe? Can we trust this?" I'm curious on. You've had a lot of conversations, I'm sure, with people who are very comfortable with the idea of DeFi, as well as conversations with people who have not a single idea as to what it is. I'm sure we've got a bit of a mix of both who are watching. What are some of those misconceptions that you've heard in the DeFi conversation, and then maybe some things that you've got to say, I guess, about it?
Big misconception is that it's a scam, simply put.
Mm,
I mean, there is still this like scammy air around crypto, and unfortunately, that's just because the way the news kind of highlights crypto, it's usually in light of like some large exploit that happened.
yeah,
So just like popular opinion around crypto in general is still very uncertain, still very skeptical, which is completely understandable. At the end of the day, these it's a permissionless technology, which means anyone can build it. It's just software; anyone can build
yeah,
on it, um, and it's a free market. So money's kind of gonna do what money's gonna do. And unfortunately, that means that sometimes people build scammy products, and sometimes the money uh, gets trapped into the scammy products and kind of falls into the wrong hands. But at the end of the day, like it's a value adding technology. There's real money in Solana DeFi. There are real people in Solana DeFi maximizing their capital in ways that they just aren't able to do in these
yeah,
traditional financial markets. That's true for myself as well. That's true for a lot of people in like other countries that aren't in the US, where like you know accessing like stable financial infrastructure is like not even possible. It's like actually not even accessible to them. And so MarginFi is like really proud to be one of the lending venues that like people like that can actually rely on, right? Like
yeah,
so yeah. um so yeah, to answer your question, I think the biggest misconception is that crypto is a scam. That's not true. There are real value-adding products being built on Solana um, that people can use freely to maximize their capital in a responsible way, and frankly, in an irresponsible way if they choose to. At the end of the day, you're your own risk manager. Um, but yeah, yeah.
yeah. I would probably echo that. I'd say that's probably thing I hear pretty often is that because of this happened, the entire thing is a sham. And you're like, dude, that's very low level thinking. And not that's low level, that's probably not the right word, but it's just very, you haven't been pushed back on one time, clearly, kind of thing. And I think that's why these conversations are great, because some people are one take away from accepting an entire paradigm of a concept. And you're like, oh, if I just known that, or if I had someone explain it in a better way, that makes sense. So I'm curious here. We can have this pulled up. So I can pull it up right now for the site. And by the way, anyone who's watching, if you haven't already, please give MarginFi a follow. They're up there in the title right above our faces. And if you are in YouTube, if you're on YouTube or another platform, should be in the description below our faces. Be sure to click MarginFi, check out their site, get involved, jump out of their Twitter, give them a follow. You're going to want to turn on those post notifications because they're going to have a whole lot of things coming out, and you're not going to want to miss that. Otherwise, I want to pull this setup just so we can do a little bit of a walkthrough and a visual for people who are just interested. Kind of leads to my next question of like, what happens when someone says, okay, I'm in, I want to try it out. What are the next steps kind of thing? So I figured this is kind of like an easy way to sort of creep into that conversation. So Nathan, what are we kind of looking at here? What does it look like when someone joins up? What is Looper? I see Lend, Stake, Portfolio, Ecosystem, and a few other options here as well.
Yeah, I mean, MarginFi is a very simple app. I think anyone who's not even crypto native can like get a hang of it pretty quickly. If you click on Lend, so when you first open up MarginFi, the first page you're going to see is the Lend page. It's a simple action box where you can select the different tokens that you want to lend. If you have
Is that
Sol in your
USDS?
wallet, you can. Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you have USDS that you want to lend and earn yield on. Um, Instead of it just sitting idly in your wallet, you can at least earn like 12% APY, right? So you can turn
Mm,
100,000 into 112,000. theoretically over the course of a year. And then, yeah, so simple yield dashboard on the lend page. Then you have stake, our stake page. For those of you that are interested in staking to the margin validator and earning, I think it's like 10.13% APY. It says there right on the page. You can just do that right there. And if you scroll down a little bit more, we actually have a little staking calculator that you can
That.
use to determine how much more SOL you're earning over a period of time, right? So there's like a little pre-calculation there. You can input your own numbers and for your own situation. But
let's see, for a normal person, like, okay, I want to try, I don't know, 10 SOL. Let's give that a go.
yeah, let's do
5
10
years. Say,
SOL. Let's
look
do
at
5
that.
years. Yeah, exactly. So
Just
yeah,
by
it's just
doing
like a
nothing,
help.
just by literally sitting
Just by
in
doing
there,
nothing. Yeah, and if you could even click from SOL to USD to see how much
Okay, look
more,
at
and
that.
that's at current prices. So that's if SOL stays at current prices. If you're bullish, right, just multiply that number by how bullish you are, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And then
but
here, people might be staking enormous amounts of wealth because they're like, hey, I want to move my savings account in here. So if you're talking about
yeah,
100 Solana, the numbers go up. And yeah, you're saying, like, it
yeah.
depends a little bit on the asset class too. But
Yeah. Well, we have people that stake like 9 figures to MarginFi,
jeez.
which those like incremental, the difference between like a 10% APY and like a 9% or an 8% means like millions of dollars per year in additional yield, right? So so yeah, like it's APYs on your validators matter a lot, especially because SOL is an inflationary asset. I think current inflation for SOL is like around 7%. So you want to make sure that your validator is giving you as much juice as possible
Yeah, wow.
because you don't want your money to get eaten up um,
Mhm.
just by sitting there. So yeah, the arena that you're currently showing is a sister product of MarginFi. Basically, it's our meme coin trading product. So it's a spot leverage product that lets you take leverage positions for or against meme coins. So you can both long and short, right? So a lot of meme coins, frankly, go to zero. Now you can profit off of those meme coins going to zero, right? So yeah, you can see it right there. It's a
Very
again
nice. I'm
fairly
feeling
simple application. You just click which coins you want to long or short. You select
Slurf. I remember this
Slurp.
token. This is
Yeah,
the one that the guy sent like $10 million to the wrong address, right?
yeah. I lost a little bit of money on Slurf, but I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. Yeah, it's a pretty simple app. You just select which one you want to long and short. You input your amounts, move this leverage slider, and then you
Mm,
click execute, and it's as simple as that, right? So
yeah.
yeah, in order to input an
Very
amount, you
nice.
have to have the token in your wallet.
Right. So I had to be
So
signed in,
because
but this is the
yeah,
process.
exactly,
Very nice. Look
exactly,
at that. All the options that you guys, if you're trading on Solana, you're going to recognize most of these guys here.
yeah,
And there's options, depending on which one you're
yeah.
holding. DJT, that's probably not a bad bet. I'm not going to lie. The next 4 years of Donald Trump in office,
Honestly, I think you
some
might
of
be
these Trump
right.
tokens.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, fun fact about the arena, we're going to release a new feature soon that will allow you to create a trading pair um, for any token that you want, right? So, for example, right
Mm,
now, like on the yield page, we have like different pairs: Billy USDC, Bowden USDC, etc., etc.
Boo
Um,
bang. Bobcat. Look at that.
yeah, Popcat, Mother, etc. Those are
Mm,
all pairs that the MarginFi team listed on the application. Soon, you'll be able to list whatever token you want on the app and then trade it. So
yeah.
exactly, that's to create a pool
Beautiful.
feature. We're launching that soon, and yeah, it's
Very
gonna be
cool.
fun.
Very,
It's
very
gonna be a lot
cool.
of fun.
That is very exciting, man. That's like probably one of the, like I said a second ago, that's probably one of the more exciting things about you guys. You guys are quite literally carving out the future here of DeFi. This is really, really interesting stuff. Here, I can come back to here if you wanted to. I know there's a few more things here if we wanted to go through them.
Yeah, I think next major feature is Looper. So essentially, if if you're like particularly bullish on a coin, say Sol, right? You think the price of Sol is going to go up. You can leverage deposit some amount of Sol to maximize the yield you're earning for that Sol. And yeah, it's a pretty straightforward product. Yeah, you can use a leverage slider to determine how much you want to lend into.
Hmm.
Um, the transaction slippage is just it's a minor detail, not super
Yeah, it
relevant,
is.
but
I was just showing how you can pull it up.
yeah. So yeah. We also have a looper product to help you like maximize your yield, because what we noticed a lot of users doing is they would lend Sol into MarginFi, borrow USDC, swap to Sol, lend that again into MarginFi, borrow USDC, swap to, like, they would kind of like
Yeah.
just do this repetitive loop until like they were completely maxed out. Now you don't have to do that manually anymore. You can just do it
Wow.
in like 3
Very
clicks
cool.
with Margin Loop and
What
leverage
was that? Did
deposit.
that come about because you saw people doing it and you said, "Hey, let's just build out a thing if they're going to do it anyway"?
Yeah,
Or what was the
exactly.
inception? Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good.
exactly. Yeah,
I love that.
it was a pretty common use case. Between like our more like avid users.
Mhm.
And so we figured like let's just build a product around that. You can do it in 1 click, right? Using
Yeah, that's
MarginFi
awesome.
Flash loans, which fun fact, MarginFi Flash loans actually don't take any fees. We're the only lending protocol that don't take a fee on our Flash loans. So um, there are other products like this, but this is probably the cheapest one to use for that reason.
That's incredible. That's very incredible. A couple other things. This is just the portfolio. So if you're signed in, you can see your entire portfolio here. And then the ecosystem page, just a bunch of options here if you want
Exactly.
to check them out.
So
There's a lot
like
of resources.
before I mentioned that there are other apps using MarginFi as like a base layer, these are some of the apps that are doing that.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
so yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, this is all very, very simple and laid out. Love this. Love this. Highly recommend. If you guys are enjoying the stream, definitely go check them out. This is, by the way, this is app.marginfi.com. Very nice. Okay. There we go. And we're back. Wait, hold on. Stop sharing. Cool, 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 cool. Yeah, that was very, very cool. So you guys are building out a bunch of stuff. Each time you guys are saying, each time there's new development in DeFi, you're like, okay, cool, let's pivot, let's figure out, or not pivot entirely, but let's figure out how we can add this. It's really user experience based. Like we want these people to have a great experience. We don't want them to have any reason to jump over to somewhere else because we believe we can do it ourselves. That's awesome to hear. That's definitely the mindset you need in innovation land where everyone is thinking that. And everyone is grinding. Every time you take a nap, someone's out there working, kind of thing. So I would love to ask like the long-term macro vision, I guess, of MarginFi. Who are you guys trying to be in this space? And I guess timeline is probably not the right word. So maybe I'll hold back on like timeline because we probably don't know the markets. We have no idea if we're going to have a 4-year cycle, if that's going to end this year around. So maybe we'll stay away from the timeline side of things. But I would love to know the super long-term vision on a macro scale.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, I think the long-term vision for MarginFi is just become Solana's base liquidity layer, right? It's like I said before, we want to be an incredibly robust lending venue that any user or any application for that matter can plug into as easily as possible to access capital, to access yield, to access spot leverage. Um, yeah, like that's kind of been our mission for a while. It'll continue to be our mission. We'll continue to ship new features and new products around MarginFi, just to like all for the purpose of giving users the best capital efficiency in DeFi. Um, but that being said, we're very interested in solidifying ourselves as Solana's base liquidity layer for all Solana DeFi activity, and it's a long tail mission. It's just a matter of continuing to create value for our users and continuing to work with and support the applications being built on Solana, but it's something that we're very passionate about and bullish on. And yeah, we look forward to the day where MarginFi is kind of like this yield primitive for Solana DeFi.
Definitely, definitely. By the way, I just have there's Twitter. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, for anyone who's interested, this is the MarginFi page. Very, very clean, super sleek. Looks great. And if you guys want to get involved, highly recommend give them a follow, engage with their stuff. They post some pretty cool things. They're pretty active on the timeline here as well. So very clean stuff, dude. So definitely recommend if you guys are looking to populate your timeline with the good stuff. Definitely want to be giving them a follow here. Back again. So for someone who's watching the stream and they're like, "This is dope. I really like this idea. I was using this other platform. I was in this other chain, but I want to give this a swing." Is the first step, hey, jump over to the website and make an account, or is the first step you think maybe like join some kind of Telegram or Discord community and meet with people and learn some stuff, read through some documents or sort of thing? What does that first step look like?
Honestly, just jump on the app and get started. It's like you said earlier, appapp.marginfi.com. You can create an account on a MarginFi in, like literally 30 seconds. It's a very simple user setup process. And yeah, just start lending on MarginFi, earning yield and doing what you do best, right? Which is making money.
Making money, baby. That is awesome to hear. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes left. I wanted to do some like rapid fire Q&A. So if I was about to ask, I was like, if it wasn't Solana, who then? Like, who's like a second place? Who's another chain that you guys are paying attention to? We can stay away from that one if you'd like. But if you do have any thoughts on any other chains that have impressed you, or you think they're going to have some cool narratives in 2025, does anything come to mind?
I mean, this is my personal opinion, and I wouldn't say that this is what MarginFi believes necessarily. I personally think that Solana is just the best product right now. I think there are some other interesting chains like Sui is interesting, Aptos is interesting. I speak like simply from like a protocol, like at the protocol level, like
Yeah,
their design and their mechanism. Um, yeah, I would say like those are pretty interesting protocols. Again, we'll have to see how that goes. I think building a layer one at this point in time is is significantly difficult. Not even because like even if your tech is good, like I think Sui tech is actually kind of promising. But even if your tech is good, at the end of the day, you have to attract an entire developer ecosystem to your chain and like and then an ecosystem of traders to your chain cultivating a community around your protocol is significantly harder and it's a very very different problem than just building good tech and because you already have a Solana, right?
yeah,
It's like, okay, well, there's already like something in the market that kind of appeals to like high performance, um, programmers and traders, etc. So,
yeah.
yeah, I guess, but maybe Sui, yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Also, while you were speaking there, it's going to give a tester. So for anyone who was wondering, it is quite literally 9 seconds, 10 seconds to make an account. I just clicked sign. I entered my like Gmail or something like that, and boom, within 10 seconds. So even faster than Nathan said to make an account, and it's that easy. And then different ways you can get the money on the platform. But I imagine if you have any wallet, you can just send it here, and it takes 10 seconds as well. So onboarding process less than 1 minute for anyone who's involved. It is beyond easy. So I very, very much highly recommend you guys get involved because there's so many options here. And it's so easy to make an account, and then boom, you're able to use the entire site, and then you're going to have a portfolio page the second you get started. So for me, I think that's pretty cool that it's that fast. A lot of times you'll have an onboarding process. It's just a little bit painful, and you lose people on the third, fourth step. And there should not be a third, fourth step. There should be a first step, get you in the door, and now you're in, and then we can kind of get started. So I love to see how simple that is. It's 2025. I'm so glad that it is that simple, especially for retail users coming in 2025. I have no idea what kind of mindset they're going to be coming in with.
Yeah, well, actually, I'd say that we do have an idea of what kind of mindset they're going to be coming with, and that's just like Snappy, right? Because
Mm,
Web 2 apps are so good, like they just are so good. And when MarginFi was kind of first being designed and built, we saw that a lot of the DeFi apps were just really bad UX, kind of poorly made on the front end, which was really unfortunate. So we realized that if we're going to attract like net new users to crypto, our app has to be performance and it has to be as seamless as the apps they use on their iPhone. So yeah, I'm glad you tried out the sign-in process actually and that you liked it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I mean, I'm a Solana. I love Solana. I've got a ton of things on Solana. I won't dox all the coins I'm in, but I'm in a fair much place. I think Solana's a lot of fun. It's easy to use. I love the chain. So yeah, I'm glad it's that easy. And I wanted to show just for people who are listening, it can be that easy if you're working with the right people. So I'm glad that we're on this podcast and doing some stuff together. And I'm excited to see the things that end up getting rolled out here. I was gonna say, if there's anything before we wrap, any like call to action / things that are coming up that you think would be helpful for anyone who's listening to kind of have going in before they give your Twitter account a follow and before they make an account on your website, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely give MarginFi a follow. Like I said, we have 2 new features coming out very, very soon. I mean, like very soon. So, we'd love for you to jump on that as quickly as possible. There'll definitely be some interesting arbitrage opportunities, as like the market, starts to experiment with some of these new features. Because again, like these are like net new in crypto, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, I think the market's gonna have a lot of fun with some of these new features. Yeah, give MarginFi a follow. Definitely credit accounts with us on app.marginfi.com. Start lending and earning yield as quickly as possible. Let that compound over time. And yeah, maybe if you want, you can give me a follow too at Masters Organ on Twitter. I post regularly about MarginFi and just about random shit all the time. So yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. You know what? We're gonna plug it real quick. The Masters Oregon account. We have to. I mean, I feel like it's only
let's
appropriate.
go.
This is the account if you guys are looking for it. That's the legendary smile and glasses combo. Lead dev MarginFi. Definitely. And by the way, if you guys are like, hey, this is something that maybe you're a company and you're like, hey, this is something I see some synergy opportunities. I'm sure there's ways to get in contact. Looks like there's Telegram right here to see if there's potential synergies and stuff like that. So if you're a company and something in here sparked your interest, highly recommend you guys reach out, give them a follow, and get involved. They're building some very, very cool stuff. So Nathan, dude, thank you so much for coming on. This was a very fun conversation for me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very cool product, and it's awesome to see how innovative you guys are and having a mindset towards innovation. So just from like my side on a personal level, I appreciate it. And it's awesome, really, really, really cool stuff you guys have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was a good
Yeah,
conversation.
man. Absolutely. For anyone who's listening, be sure to give them a follow. If you're on YouTube, go to the description. You can find all that information. And we'll see you all in the next one. Peace.